Hi everyone, my name is Frank Volker. I work with ATL's implementation team, and today we're going to talk about users, profiles, and roles. When beginning to discuss users, the first place to consider is the login screen. Typically when you log into Windows, you have a username, which might be preceded by a domain. You also typically have a password. When you log into Titan, you'll connect to a specific server using an address and a port. You can use your same username that you have from Windows in your Titan login. This is called Windows authentication. And typically, since you're using your Windows authentication, you won't have to enter a password. So I'm going to log in. I've logged in with my user profile. Since my user profile is Windows authentication, it meant that I use the same login from my computer domain as in Titan. If I ever forget what profile I'm logged in as, I can see it in the bottom left-hand corner of the screen. When you first install Titan, you'll typically choose a single Titan administrator / superuser account that you'll use to log in for the first time. This account is set up using the configuration utility on the actual Titan server. If I open the Titan application server, I can navigate to the configuration utility by going to the local disk, Program Files x86, Accelerated Technology Labs Incorporated, ATL Titan, and then scroll down to the configuration utility. I'll double click on it and open the application. The configuration utility provides a number of options which we explore in other videos, but for now I'm going to choose Create Profile. What this does is it allows me to choose the currently active user that I'm logged in as and automatically create a Titan super user profile from it. This is typically only done the first time that you set up the Titan application server. Back in Titan, let's look at the main way to create a profile after the initial profile has been set up. On the administration ribbon, we can go to Profiles in the Security group. The Profiles tab opens with a list view of all the existing profiles in the system. They're arranged by username, contact, authentication type, profile type, whether they're active, whether they're temporary with a valid date, and the friendly username. As with any other list view in Titan, you can reorder these columns, use the filter bar to filter out results, and use the groupings. As an example, we can drag authentication type up using the typical groupings to sort by simple or Windows authentication. We can drag that back and use the filter bar to filter to usernames that are just on the Titan domain. For now, we'll clear the filter on the username and look to create a new profile. We can do that by going to Create in the bottom right hand part of the list view. We'll set an authentication type of simple, a profile type of internal, and a username for Steve Hanks. We're going to set a simple password for Steve Hanks. We'll also need to create a contact to associate with this profile. Since Steve didn't exist in our system before, we can't choose one from the drop-down list. We're going to use the wand icon to create a brand new one. We'll enter his first name, last name, some initials, a phone number, and an email address. We'll also set his contact to be active. Then we'll save and close. That's created a simple contact that we can use for the purposes of this profile. Now that the profile is active and it has a contact, we can click Save in order to enable it. Now that Steve's profile is created, we can take a look at the roles and privileges he has available. In the system, we have a variety of different kinds of roles, including some unusual ones. One of the simplest roles to add to a user is the superuser role. We take it from the auxiliary grid on the left and drag it to the right. Steve now has the superuser permissions. However, he won't be able to access them until he logs in again. Steve won't have any individual privileges useful to him at the moment, but I would like to add some special privileges to him, including dashboards, the task scheduler, and the bulk sample import. Special privileges such as these enable additional features of Titan. The dashboards provide a useful way to view your result data. The bulk sample import allows Steve to import many samples in a batch. And the task scheduler console will allow Steve to work with any running tasks such as automatically calculating QC results. At this point, I'm going to test out Steve's profile. I'm going to save and close, go up to the application menu, and choose Log Off. Now I'll change my username. And since I'm not on Windows authentication, I do have the option of using a password. So I'll enter Steve's password and log in. Now, as you can see, we're logged in as Steve on Titan. Steve has access to pretty much everything that my profile has. Being a super user grants you permissions to everything in the system. Steve has access to the dashboard, the task scheduler console, and the bulk sample import, but he also has access to all the security permissions and roles. Let's take a closer look at some of these profiles. Simple authentication, as we spoke before, allows you to enter a password independently of your Windows login. Windows authentication uses the Windows login. We have several different domains set up for specific users. Every user has a contact. Here's Eve Heft. Eve has a first name, middle name, last name, and initials. She also has a prefix. She has some contact information, an email and such, as well as a link to her website. Down at the bottom, she's marked as an employee, and she does have a Titan profile. This contact is also active. This indicates that it can be used for the purposes of profiles and employees and such. Profiles can be marked inactive in the case of a user leaving the system. We also have two checkboxes, one for Permit Auto Email and one for Permit Auto Fax. Checking these boxes allows Titan to send emails or faxes when set up to this contact. And finally, there's an image. Typically this is a portrait. On the additional tabs, Eve has an address, as well as a default address. She can have some survey results for any survey she's participated in. And if she takes care of any assets, they'll show up here as well. Now that we've taken a closer look at Eve's contact, let's take a closer look at Eve's profile. Eve has the superuser role. The superuser role has a number of privileges associated with it. Some of these appear as special privileges within Eve's profile. If you remember, we selected bulk sample import the dashboards, and the task scheduler earlier, but the super user role also has enabled these other privileges as well. The bulk sample import allows you to import multiple samples rapidly. The dashboards allow you to review your data. Data import is for advanced templates. Delete override allows you to force deletion on artifacts within the system that wouldn't otherwise allow it. There's also a privilege to design data exchange templates, design global data exchange templates, design global reports, and global is used in the sense that they can be used by anyone, design user reports, and work with the task scheduler. The super user role has also added some reports to Eve's profile, such as the label, work list, analytical results, and bench sheet reports. On the Sessions tab of Eve's profile, we can look at what sessions have been logged using this particular profile. So any user, since this is an internal profile, can use this profile and log on from any machine. This shows what machine logged on, the IP, as well as the logon user and domain. So even though I didn't put in my logon user information, since I'm logged into the computer hosting this copy of Titan, it still recognizes me. As you can see, a different user and machine logged in on the 20th. Eve's profile has one remaining button we haven't spoken about. This Reset Settings button is used to reset the user settings associated with this profile. If I go to the Laboratory tab and open a work order, this gives me the list view for all the work orders in the last 30 days. If I rearrange this so that custom appears on the left, extend that, maybe change how the work order date displays, and then move state all the way to the right, I can close this tab and go back to it at another time, and it remembers my changes. Customer on the left, work order date, and then state all the way on the right. If we go into the user profile that's currently logged in, and then we choose Reset Settings, that will clear all of those settings. This is in case you'd like to reset back to factory defaults. Let's look at a different scenario. Back on the profiles, we have some profiles that are Windows authentication. We're going to take a look at my profile. When we create a new profile that's Windows authentication type, we have the option of browsing our Active Directory in order to find users within our local domain and pull in their information. This can also automatically create contact information about the user. I like to utilize Windows authentication profiles to take advantage of the Active Directory shortcut. Let's take a closer look at the roles involved with each profile. I'll choose Roles from Security, which opens the list view of all the roles in the system. We're going to open Super User. Each role has a General tab with a title, description, and active checkbox. On the Privileges tab, we get to the core of each role. Organized by artifact is a list of permissions. These are called CRUD permissions. They stand for Create, Read, Update, and Delete. For each artifact, represented by an individual row, we have the option of Create, Read, Update, and Delete checkboxes but we also have the option of positive and negative. CRUD permissions can be a little tricky to understand. Here we have the analysis method artifact. An analysis method artifact in Titan represents a given method configured and created by some user or possibly imported. Each user could potentially have the option to create, read, which is view, update, and delete a given analysis method in the system. When any of these boxes are checked for a given role, that means the role grants that permission. The plus sign means grant, and the minus sign means deny. If I was to choose deny create for analysis methods, this user, the super user, would not be able to create any new analysis methods. Specifically, when you have a deny permission, it means that no matter what, even if you have additional roles, you cannot create a new analysis method. If both of these boxes are unchecked, you simply can't create analysis methods using this role. Each profile can have multiple roles, so if you have super user and maybe a laboratory administrator, the administrator role might have a create permission here, where the super user role does not. Having both roles would mean that you are allowed to create new analysis methods, read them, update them, and delete them. If there's ever a deny permission checked, that means that regardless of how many roles that profile has, you will never be able to create a new analysis method. I recommend against changing the super user role. Let's look at some other roles that might be more useful. The laboratory technician role allows you to enter results, create work list, and QC batches. As you can see on the Privileges tab, much less of these are available, and almost no delete permissions. Under Special Privileges, the laboratory technician can only look at dashboards. The laboratory technician also only has access to the work list report. You can view any profiles that are members of this role from here. As you can see, Rob Carter and David Zivia are two members of the laboratory technician group. If the laboratory technician role has any instructions or standard procedures, we can store them under the Guides tab. The Guides tab is your typical Titan file browser, which allows you to add files, remove files, and refresh the screen using the buttons on the right. Laboratory technicians can only enter results, create analysis batches, and QC batches. However, QC managers can approve and reject results and update QA and QC. These privileges are reflected here. They don't have any special permissions though. Some of the members in my system include Carol Albright. There's also a read-only role, which allows users to look up customers, work orders, sales orders, quotes, invoices, scheduled tasks, and results. This is typically used more for business applications. We also have a senior laboratory technician. With this role, you can do anything that a laboratory technician does, but you also have the ability to validate results. Only Rob Carter has the senior laboratory technician role. The superuser role that we reviewed earlier is generally used only by one Titan administrator. The supervisor role, however, has almost the same access. It has privileges across all the artifacts in order to manage the whole system. Let's take a look at how we might create our own role. On the roles list view, we'll click Create in the bottom right. And let's say that we want to create a role for a person who will be working with customers, invoices, and similar sales work. We'll call this Sales. Then on the Privileges tab, we'll save our new role and click Create. Now we'll choose an artifact. A likely artifact would be Customers. And we'll say that we can read customers. I'll create another one, and we'll look for invoices. We'll say we can read those. And quotes. All right. So now we've created a sales role that can read customers, invoices, and quotes. But that's not all. If we look at customers, you'll notice that customers have different types of other artifacts that they're associated with, such as customer types, default contacts, billing cycles, and payment terms. The new sales role we created doesn't have those additional privileges. It only has customer, invoice, and quote. The way we can fix that is by selecting one of the artifacts, right-clicking, going to Actions, and choosing Create Associated Privileges. This will create any additional privileges required to use the customer. As you can see, we now have 29 artifacts, including account transactions, credit memos, customer product prices, and similar. You can also do this multiple times, so I'll choose Invoice and choose Associated Privileges for that as well. And finally, Quotes. Let's try out our new role. First, I'll navigate to Administration, choose Profiles, and choose Steve Hanks, our new user. We're going to remove the superuser permission and add in the sales permission. Now we'll save. From the application menu, I can log off in order to reset the permissions. I'll log back in. And here we are. As you can see, there's no administration tab, and when we go to business, we only have a limited number of items. We can choose customers and open customers. Then we can open an individual customer and any invoices, as well as work orders and sales orders, quotes, and deliveries. Customer is a pretty far-reaching artifact, so we get a lot of these different buttons across the top. We can take a look at how we might limit our permissions as well. I'll go back and log off. And I'll log back on. Go to Profiles. Or actually, we'll go to Roles. And open up Sales. And go to Privileges. Now, Sales has the work order privilege. And it's allowed to create, read, and update work orders. But sales personnel should not be allowed to transition the work order into different states past submitted. So here on the work order artifact, I've just opened the privilege by double clicking on it and then navigated to the workflow tab. The properties tab allows you to allow and deny, read, and update on individual properties of each artifact. In this case, work order has collectors and comments and contacts and that sort of thing as well. We can also filter this individual privilege so it only shows you certain types of work orders. So back on the workflow tab, since this is sales, I'm going to uncheck these allows. Sales can only create and submit work orders. Let's take a look. If we go to work orders, we can navigate to the state of the work orders and organize those there. If we try to take this in progress work order, right click on it and transition it, the completed and canceled transitions are visible but unavailable because Steve Hanks, being a salesperson, can't transition those. However, he could transition these created work orders to submitted. You'll also notice that if we try and delete these, delete is grayed out as well. Let's fix that. We'll go back. Log in. Go to Roles, Sales, Privileges, and find Work Order, and allow Delete. We'll return back to Steve Hanks. And return to work orders, created, and now delete is available. Sometimes particularly complex artifacts need an advanced delete permission in order to remove them. In order to apply that position, we would log off, log in as a user with sufficient permission, go to Roles, and we'll use our sales role as an example. Then under Special Privileges, there's an option for Delete Override. This allows you, the end user, to delete items beyond their scope. If an item would normally require that you delete other items too, you can use this delete override. It's also possible to set up roles to filter down to only specific types of artifacts. We have an example of a product lab that produces batches of yogurt with an associated role that shows only yogurt batches. On the Privileges tab, we have our typical artifacts. But under Production Batch, if we open up this artifact, it has a filter that reduces down to only those production batches that have a product with a name that contains yogurt. Constructing these filters can be pretty technical and beyond the scope of most users. I would recommend that you contact our support team in order to get assistance if you're interested in filtering out your privileges. On the Administration tab, there's a couple of useful tools in the Configuration group. Sessions act similar to the profile sessions that we saw earlier, except it shows sessions for all profiles. Tenant shows the profile sessions for that individual. Shale shows a different set of profile sessions. The other useful tool in the configuration section is the electronic signatures. This allows you to set up required signatures for different artifacts when transitioning to different states. For instance, when an analysis batch is transitioned to canceled, it requires that the user enter a signature in order to complete the process. That about does it for our Titan user group on setting up users, profiles, and roles. Hope you enjoyed the discussion, and as always, if you have any questions, you can talk to your ATL account manager or contact us on the web at support.atlab.com.